Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of the Catributors podcast. Today without a guest. But there isn't that much news to talk about anyway, I guess.
Yeah, it's been very light on dev blogs recently.
Although we do have some Portal news, I suppose. But on the dev blog side, the first one would be just a short one, changes to brawls, and basically they disable divisions in brawls because they figured out that some people actually divisioned and they never planned for that. You know, the most interesting thing about this is that they talk like it's not working correctly, right? But even like years ago, in 3 versus 3 brawls, well, it's a year or so ago, I know that I've been in a 3-man division against 0 divisions, right? It's probably not that impactful, but this isn't like a new thing in the matchmaker. It's just when they had, I guess, smaller team brawls, it might not have been so bad.
The whole thing to me sounds like they maybe haven't sort of. I mean, they do this sometimes. They don't quite think through how players are actually going to, play with the modes and whatever that they give them. So it kind of feels like it falls into that.
I mean, the interesting thing is, right, there was like a 12 versus 12 brawl, which didn't even have any restrictions, I think. So it was like basically a random battle just called brawl, and that I didn't even match, I think, ships. Because usually in brawls, right, you don't enforce that you have to have the same type of ships. Could have 2 destroyers and a cruiser against like 1 destroyer, cruiser, and a battleship or something like that, right? Which is in the small brawls where you expect people to bring a 3-man division.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting or it's fine, but in the bigger stuff, not so much. So honestly, like, it's not like the brawl matchmaker has ever been working, or it's like there was never really a matchmaker, and it's just has been abused so much this time that they finally had to acknowledge it, I guess.
Yes.
Speaking of this, we could also mention that in the 3 versus 3 carrier brawl that has recently happened, apparently people abused it so much that Wargaming had to sanction some players because they stopped attacking each other and just farmed planes, which resulted in way too much experience. Which goes to show that if you actually kill all the planes in a carrier, you know, it was never intended for that.
Yeah, this is not the first time where they've had to come down on people. Like it wasn't like there was nothing specifically in the rules that said, "Hey, don't do that." But they've obviously decided that that's abusing what the intent of that particular 3 versus 3 was. But it's a bit. I don't know. It strikes me as a bit silly. Like the whole idea of 3 versus 3 carriers was kind of silly to begin with. So. Yeah, well, I'm sort of not surprised that people figured out a way to do things with it that they hadn't intended.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, Wargaming never intended for planes to be shot down. And when it finally happened, it broke the system.
Yeah, can't have all of these people shooting down all of these planes. It's not allowed.
Well, then in the next dev blocks, there are some changes to test ships and submarines. Well, mostly the Japanese cruisers, I suppose, that are currently in testing.
Yeah, which seems like mostly nerfs to them, interestingly. So even with their previously rather short ranges, they're actually reducing the ranges of some of them even more. And increasing the detectability of a lot of them as well.
This has
gotten some buffs though.
Yeah, it's probably nice because it didn't seem like a very strong ship.
Yeah, it was definitely underwhelming with its initial stats.
I know it's interesting because the Japanese cruisers with the nerf ranges, they're going more into the direction of the Panasian light cruisers, but the Panasians have smoke.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what they have in mind for these very short-ranged but not able to smoke. Like, you're going to have to what's what I'm looking for? Like, you're almost going to have to the division with somebody with smoke is what I was going for.
I mean, I suppose that the tier 8 and tier 9 still have reasonable ranges, but it's like the lower tiers are going to struggle. Oh, well, I mean, we'll have to see, I guess. I suppose they are focused on the torpedoes a lot anyway. Which is also interesting, because with the concealment nerf, they'll be less able to stealth torp.
Yeah, it seemed like that was going to be the whole thing, but they were going to be very focused around that. But yeah, they've made it harder. So I don't know. I don't know if they really quite 100% know what they're doing with that line. If they've come up with this initial concept and then it's not really working, and now they're just kind of tweaking the numbers and like, well, how do we make it work?
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. But it doesn't look like Wargame has much of a plan so far. Which isn't necessarily news, I guess. Well, also, there are some changes to submarines, and basically the submarine surveillance consumable is now 30 seconds earlier, like at 30 seconds less cooldown. So you can use it earlier in battle, and I mean, the cooldown is pretty harsh anyway, because as Wargaming stated themselves, they don't want submarines to be detected. But yeah. It also shows how absolutely ready submarines are, because they still haven't figured out the basics yet. How their consumables work.
Indeed. And yeah, well, we're going to get on to talk about subs a little bit more, but yeah, they keep making noises about how, oh yeah, they're almost ready, you guys. Almost ready. We're almost ready to go.
Fit in perfectly, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there are some changes to submarine skills. I have to admit, I'm not really up to date in what submarine skills are these days, because I haven't really looked at them in a while. It looks like they are shifting around like the positions in the skill tree and then changing bonuses accordingly. Well, other than that, the last dev block is simply just ship restrictions on clan battles, and they limited the sharebook. I'm surprised, because I would have thought that this is a very good ship for clan battles, because it has so low DPM.
Yeah, maybe it's more to do with people tanking with it a bit, but even then I don't know. I mean, it probably has some of the best armor of a tier 8 cruiser. But are there better? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Maybe it's that combination of armor and big-ish guns.
And the heal, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly has staying power, but I would have thought that it loses out against like DPM. But who knows? I mean, I'm not really into clan battles, so there might be a reason for it.
Maybe the heal is more of a factor. Most of the tier 8 cruisers that have a heal are generally a lot more squashy. So maybe it's that combination of a heal and relative tankiness.
Maybe. Well, that basically concludes the dev blocks and brings us to more news articles. And as Jedi already hinted at, we're gonna start with a developer bulletin that's about submarines and how their early access is gonna work, more or less.
As if we haven't been early accessing them for the last God knows how long.
Yes. But now it's true early access.
Apparently.
It's only early access if you spend money on it, right?
Yeah, that was early access. Now we're going into just early access.
Although they haven't confirmed all the details here, and they make a disclaimer that this is still not all final, it basically looks like the early access is gonna work just like most early accesses, right? There are going to be sequential bundles, and you get submarine tokens with personal challenges, and with that you can unlock those sequential bundles. The interesting part to note is that first, German and US Tier 6 and Tier 8 submarines will arrive in early access. They say nothing about the Tier 10s. And I'm wondering if there's I presume the sequential bundles will be one Tier 6, then the other Tier 6, then one Tier 8, then the other Tier 8. But I didn't see any confirmation there. I don't think they'll have two different sequences. And probably some camos interwoven there. Now the question is, are the Tier 10s just gonna sold regularly? Are the 10s gonna come later? They also mentioned that there will be a new submarine container that contains submarines without any specification what submarines. Now it wouldn't make sense to have sequential bundles that you have to buy one after another and then have something that you can get in a sequential bundle in a lockbox. I mean, not making sense has never stopped wargaming, but that would kind of surprise me.
Yes. Well, I mean, any way to monetize, right?
So maybe that's gonna be a premium submarine in there. Maybe that's gonna be the Tier 10 submarines. As I said, the article is a bit light on detail there. What the article does tell you, though, is they tell you once again just how well submarines fit into the gameplay, and that they are ready for introduction, despite the fact that in the same article they tell you all the changes to submarines, like they changed the ping again, the automatic ASB for aircraft carriers, and as we've just discussed in the dev block, there are some changes to the commander skills and to the submarine surveillance consumable. So they are so ready that they need multiple changes. And at the same time, there was mentioned here somewhere that for several updates after the release, we don't plan to make significant changes to the gameplay to submarines, the settings, and the way they interact with other ship types, unless there's critically need to do so. And well, wargaming is usually not in the same opinion what's critical than we are. This will allow them to catch on in the game and give players the opportunity to acclimatize to a new ship type. In the meantime, we'll be able to collect most up-to-date data at the same time, make small balance changes necessary. So, wargaming says submarines are ready and fit into the game. They are so ready that they won't be changed anymore, but at the same time, they are forcing new changes in the patch that are untested. So they are ready, but they're throwing a bunch of untested changes on them, and then they don't want to change them afterwards, no matter what the test says. Well, I mean...
I think from I can kind of see why they're saying that, in that they're setting a period of this, 2 patches, where it's not going to be a moving target in terms of, or they just say several updates, don't they? So not even necessarily 2 patches, but I mean, I'm guessing it's so they can gather data for a significant enough period of time to then, well, presumably tell us that submarines are fine and that we're just playing them wrong, or that we don't understand, and that's why we're not enjoying them. But yeah, I can kind of see why we're getting this, but it is still a bit ironic, really, that they're doing all these new things, and then it's like, yeah, they're fine, they're stable. Just going to leave them be for a bit.
I mean, honestly,
any changes. Okay.
I mean, honestly, to me, it sounds like they've given up, right? They basically tried tweaking submarines for a year. It didn't work, so they were like, okay, screw this, we just pretend it works and we don't want to touch it. A bit like what they did with carriers. They tweaked them, and at a certain point where they weren't actually in a good state, they just stopped and be like, okay, we don't care anymore. And I think reached its
That's
debris
not-
subs.
That's not the worst assessment of carriers I've ever heard, I suppose.
But I mean, it's just so sad when you read all of those statements. Anyway, in a note, what I already expected would happen is also happening. Basically, the operation, the new submarine-only operation, right? It's gonna be for Tier 6 and Tier 8 submarines. But as we've learned, right, Tier 6 and 8 submarines come in sequential bundles that you unlock with those personal challenges, where you know, like they did in the past, right? You do this personal challenges, you get tokens. With the tokens, you unlock them in sequential bundles. And I haven't said exactly how those bundles look like, but based on how this usually goes is, first of all, it might take you a few weeks until you get the tokens to even unlock a submarine. So there is no guarantee that you can actually, for free, play this operation when it's released. You might have to wait a week or two. And the second thing is, it's very unlikely that you get the 8 submarines for free, because there have never been all sequential bundles for free. So I presume if you wanna experience that new operation in the 8 submarine, then you're gonna pay money for it. So only...
Yeah, this does feel a bit sneaky. Like, oh, here's this new operation with submarines, but you're not necessarily going to have a submarine in time to play it. But, you know, give us some money and maybe you will.
I mean, to me, it feels...
feel to it.
To me, it feels like that Wargaming is aware that there's so much hate for submarines that they aren't gonna get much sales from the PvP side. So they were like, okay, so most people hate submarines, very few people want to play submarines, most people won't spend money on this. How do we get them to spend money anyway? All right, we make an operation that have people been asking for us for 3 years, and we're gonna sell them the submarine for the operation. I suppose on the bright side, if that works and they make a lot of sales because of that, maybe they will actually realize that they can monetize operations and will put more budget into operations. But, you know, that's just desperately trying to find a silver lining here.
Indeed.
But I'm actually looking forward to this operation in case I can get a submarine for free, like a Tier 6 one, right? Even if it's only Tier 6, I'd be very interested to give this a try.
Just the fact that it's a new operation, yes, of course, I want to, you know, I would like to try it.
Then, I think what we touched on earlier, like the ping thingy comes back. So you now have both ping indicators, right? The racing ping and the thing on the surface. More hit ribbons that show you if the submarine actually got full damage or splash. Although, when I look at the two ribbons, right, at first I didn't realize what the difference was, but it looks like the line, the gray line in the center, is slightly thinner in the other ribbon. I mean, come on, you could have made those ribbons a little bit more different, right? Like, it's not just me. On first glance, they look the same, right?
Yeah, it could do some work, maybe.
I mean, there could be some sort of explosion on something or whatnot. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering, like, have they actually messed up the article and they meant to put in 2 different images and they've accidentally put in the same image twice? I don't know.
I mean, at first I would think so, but the gray line in the center is slightly smaller, but so they're definitely two different.
Oh, yeah. No, now you've pointed that out. Yeah, the thickness of the middle part is different. That's the only difference. Yeah. Okay. In which case, that is kind of silly.
I mean, you could have even if you just made 2 lines instead of a small and bigger one, like something that makes it on first glance visually different, right?
Yeah.
This is
it should
silly.
be fairly distinctive without having to peer that closely at it and have someone point out the difference.
Oh well, then we have the automatic anti-submarine warfare aircraft carriers that they're going to implement, which, completely untested, obviously, so it's fine and is ready for the game. And then some more about the Halloween operations and changes to commander skills upgrades. I think we've talked about this in the dev blog when it was announced.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have. Although I'm sure we'll have the usual struggle of operations that haven't been around for a while. The bunch of people just kind of flailing. I've definitely seen that with some of the returned operations, although most people have picked them up reasonably quickly, I think. But there's still been some utterly daft, even some of the older ones, like Defense of Newport, I had around the other day where like half the team rushed out, managed to get torpedoed by all the incoming like destroyers and cruisers that had torpedoes. So that one didn't end well.
I mean, the whole idea is obviously with the operations to introduce or to get people to try them out who have never seen them. Because, since operations last were actually sort of a thing, years have passed, right? So you would expect that a lot of people have started playing since then, they've never seen them. And if they are successful in attracting a lot new people into operations, that would be a good thing. Now it just remains to be seen if they need to adjust difficulty and such with scaling and so on, or need to offer additional. Well, okay, Wargaming was never very good at offering information for players what they should do. Well, we shall see how it goes.
Well, yeah, I might even. I mean, I know a lot of people don't even look at guides and things, but given that it is completely brand new, I might even do a video on operations. Here's how the operation works, which I haven't done in like 4 years or something. Because there wasn't a lot of new ones after a while. So yeah,
it might actually help quite a bit, I guess. Well, in other news, Sam is now available. He's in boxes, as cats tend to be.
Yes, indeed. I've told Sam he's now available, and he didn't really seem to be bothered by the news. So,
well, he's now internationally famous. Well, I mean, he was before.
So yeah, I must admit, I spent some of the doubloons I had on my account and just managed to get the German Sam. I was quite just looking at the combined bundled thing, which is like what 30k doubloons. it's ridiculous for how much they want for the. It's essentially like the things you want out of it would be the 2 captains and the 3 perma camos, and that's a lot of money for 2 captains and 3 perma camos.
Definitely.
But hey, you can just roll the dice and buy gamble boxes instead and hope that you manage to get the thing. True. Which I admit I did because it's Sam and I had to have Sam.
Yeah, I mean, me as well. I bought 5 gamble boxes and I got 2 Sams. I mean, I already had quite a few of the possible rewards, so it might have increased my chances. But I got lucky. I now have a German and a British Sam. It's interesting that they haven't actually changed that they'll have the exact same picture. And that there is absolutely no difference between those two. They could have really just made one Sam that can go on both kinds of ships.
Yeah, or had the caps be slightly different. That would have been the other things. Have one with the Royal Navy cap and the other with the Kriegsmarine cap. But
yeah,
Wargaming likes to copy paste. What can I say? If they can get away with copy pasting, they will copy paste.
But here the Sam is meowing, and I'm quite happy. I have to say,
indeed.
I've waited for a proper cat commander for years.
One that's not a cartoon cat.
Well, I wouldn't have minded the cartoon if it made cat noises. So, else do we have in news? There is, there's an article that tells you to play with friends. It's actually nice. I mean, it's not the hardest thing in the world, but they tell you how to create a division, I guess. Which, actually, it's not like Wargaming's UI is that self-explanatory always, so it's nice. I also even give you some tips that in battle you should work together and maybe division with ships that can help each other. So, I mean, as far as articles for newcomers, that's not too bad.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. I mean, they didn't define what this word "friends" is, but it probably means something to somebody somewhere.
True.
Maybe it's some premium feature that you have to pay for. I don't know.
Then next is an article about the player transfer from the Russian to Europe and probably the other regions. And I think you mentioned earlier that this is currently suspended because of technical difficulties, but technically you can.
There's a very short thing on the support announcements page. Very, very, very short announcement. It just says that it stopped. The account transfer stopped between regions for technical reasons for an indefinite period, and we'll tell you when it comes back. So it doesn't say what the reason is, but who knows? It might actually be a technical reason other than all of the real life politics stuff that's going on and continuing to go on with wars that aren't wars and whatnot.
I mean, they mentioned that it's incredibly complicated in the article, but they are fully committed to do this. So, if you want to transfer your account from Russia, you can. But the more interesting part for me personally is in the frequently asked questions. They basically say, will Leicester and Wargaming versions of the game be identical? And they say Leicester will continue World of Warships in Russia and Belarus, and with a new client based on the current game version. But the clients might diverge in the future, which basically means they must have a different developer studio than, Leicester does their own development, and Wargaming does their own development, and maybe they share some data, I don't know. But the thing is, that means they can't have moved all the developers from Leicester, because Leicester still works on World of Warships and Wargaming works on World of Warships. So not only so there must be sort of new people in charge now, right? I mean, they might have transferred some people. I suppose Leicester won't be as big as it used to be under Wargaming St. Petersburg. But we can only speculate here. But the way I see it, we might actually get new people developing World of Warships now. At least some new people. Which could be good.
Yeah, I mean, we also might start to see some slight divergences. Probably not too much in terms of ship stats to begin with, but I mean, if you look at the example that we already have of the China server, which is run by a Chinese partner, there are some noticeable differences in terms of things like pricing, things that are available there that aren't available on other servers in terms of rarer vehicles. And as time has gone on, there have been stat changes that have happened on the sort of non-Chinese server side that haven't then gone on to the Chinese server side. So yeah, for a long time actually there was a map that was exclusive to the Chinese server as well before it came to all of the other servers. So we might see things like that. Maybe, but it'll be over the next couple of years kind of time frame rather than anything dramatic happening right away, I expect.
I mean, I wouldn't expect anything dramatic soon, but honestly, considering some of Leicester's high-ups and ideas they had, I would not really be surprised if there was something like, I don't know, on the Russian server, Russian ships have 10% higher stats or something like that. I would not be terribly
they might
surprised.
just go full on, like, oh yeah, you play the Russian server and all your Russian ships have like, I don't know, double critical damage, or I don't even know, double citadel damage, or who knows.
So it's honestly, I find it interesting how tight-lipped wargaming has been about this whole transition thing the whole time, because you might think people would want to know who develops the game and such, but this is, I mean, the most confirmation we have so far now that wargaming is going to continue development and Russia is just going to do their own thing.
Indeed. It does seem, I mean, there was kind of much speculation earlier about like if they were trying to get some of the core talent out of St. Petersburg to continue working on the game as like the core development team. So I don't know. It might go as far as like actual parallel development, considering the sort of unique situation with Leicester having been the studio that sort of made the game to begin with. But who knows?
Who knows? Maybe there is hope for a better game.
I'm not going to be too wildly optimistic.
Well, in other news, what else do we have here? We have a C Smackdown where they're waiting for Iowa replays, so if you've got a good Iowa game, I suppose you can submit replays there.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa's not a bad ship to play, so that's if it's a ship you enjoy, I suppose you might as well take part in that. There's actually some not bad prizes, I think. I'm trying to bring up the thing now. Where is it? Iowa. It's somewhere. It's I don't know what it is about the layout of the news portal on Warships, but somehow I managed to never quite find the articles I'm actually looking for. Oh, right, there it is, Iowa. Right, actual prizes. What are the actual prizes? Because that might be interesting to know.
It's the bottom and how to get into an episode.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Commemorative flag, some camouflages, combat signals, econ bonuses, and a special achievement, and 100 community tokens. Okay.
So nothing really too interesting except for, well, I mean, you get a unique flag and an achievement.
It's a bit of bragging rights. I mean, I think the camos, it says 20x camos there, and on the graphic area it says 8x camos, but yeah, the camos seem to be fairly unique as well. So yeah, bragging rights, I guess. It's bragging rights. You can get a unique looking camo or a patch or a flag out of it, so yeah.
True. And yeah, there are multiple categories. There is maximum damage, maximum ship sunk, maximum potential damage, maximum per salvo, maximum aircraft destroyed, and best moment, which is, rather subjective, I guess.
Yeah. At least, I mean, you can kind of see it. I mean, they're casting quite a wide net with this, and it says, people can submit unlimited replays, so I can see why the prizes aren't anything special. But they have in previous ones, they've had like, top X number of people get a, premium ship container or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I also said the jury reserves the right to provide additional compensation to participants, so I suppose, I think if you send something good, even if you don't end up in the episode, maybe you get something. But I mean, it's an interesting idea, especially to get people to play ships that might not be as common. Like Iowa is not a ship you see that often.
I guess it's. I mean, there's so many ships to play now that even if you're just thinking about tier 9 battleships.
True.
There's the tech tree ships. There's a whole bunch of other tier 9 premiums and special ships as well. So yeah. Iowa's still it's still solid. Still a solid choice at tier 9 though.
Yeah, but it's outclassed by quite a few things, I suppose.
Indeed. Although the guns can still reasonably hold their own.
Then other things we have is new sequential bundles in the armory, which is basically, as the name says, you buy the first bundle, you're then allowed to buy the next one. They all cost doubloons, and most of them are gamma boxes.
Yeah, I must admit, I went through the sequence and bought them because they're not super expensive. I think I didn't figure out the total cost, but it's a couple of thousand doubloons. It's like 6, 7, I don't know. But I got. It's one of those things where you have to figure out yourself if it's going to be worth it for you. And I got what was it, the Brandenburg, which I didn't already have out of it, and I think there was a perma camo from one of the Seven Seas containers as well, which worth less than it used to be because it's just the perma camo, not the econ bonus. But yeah, I mean, tier 8 premium battleships like 12 to 13k doubloons generally. So I don't know what the Brandenburg is specifically, but. So it was worth it for me, but it's one of those things where it's like, you gotta consider look at the actual chances of the things.
Yeah, I mean,
if it's going to be worth it. So, some of them were kind of like, spend a couple of 100 goals and here's some credits and here's some XP, and it's like, oh, okay, I really don't want to spend gold on that, but okay, you have to get to the later stuff. So I did, as for science. And I got lucky, I guess I can say.
Yeah, like a lot of it is gambling. There are some fixed rewards, like some coal in there and some credits and so on. And I mean, you can determine for yourself if that whole sequence is worth it.
I mean, at least you can look at the individual rewards and see the drop rates and what's going to be in the different things. So, yeah. So yeah, I mean, for some people, they might go, right, I'll buy a couple of them because they are relatively cheap, like the individual ones. But if you just go and buy all of them in sequence, then yeah, it's a good couple of thousand. Which is almost why they've made the individual ones so cheap, because they're sort of hoping people are just like, this is cheap, this one's cheap, and this one's cheap, and I'll just click, and before you know it, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of in microtransaction category again, right? You look at this like in 99 doubloons, you might even have gotten some doubloons from, like you get like 50 doubloons sometimes from like the free bundles that they have in a patch or so.
Mm-hmm.
And you might even have some doubloons lying around, so you're like, yeah, okay, I'll open that. And then maybe you keep opening it. And once they got you, that's with sequential bundles, right? If you open until the 4th or the 5th, and then there's something else that you want in maybe the next one, then maybe you buy some doubloons, and then maybe you keep opening. But yeah, in this article, by the way, you can see like the containers, and you can see, so that's at least nice. They have in the article the chances for some stuff here. So
yeah, the information is there for people that actually are sort of looking at them. You can actually see. I mean, you could sit and add up all the prices. Be nice if they would actually then give like a total price for like buying all of them instead of just all of the individual ones.
But that would scare people off.
Sneaky, yeah.
So other news, I guess, King of the Seas 14, you can register now. So interesting enough, they went back to King of the Seas because the last tournament, the last two, they just renamed them for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they just maybe they did some surveys and were like, oh yeah, the branding isn't working, so let's go back to who knows.
What's nice to hear is that aircraft carriers and submarines are not permitted yet. We will see if they change it in the future. But they still keep the carriers out. And they keep the submarines out. So small mercies. I'm not looking forward to the day when they decide that submarines should be competitive, because that would be utterly sad probably. But hey. For now, they haven't completely lost their sanity.
For now.
So yeah, if you want to, you can register and see how far you get. Obviously, you need a team for that.
There's the usual kind of slate of restrictions as well, but I don't think there's anything too surprising. Like, you can have a Kremlin or an Ohio. Or you can have a Petro or a Napoli.
Yeah.
So they're trying to limit certain ships, I suppose. Well, they are trying to limit certain ships.
It's interesting that I don't see a Stalingrad there in the limitations, actually.
No, Moskva and Nevsky, but not Stalingrad. And Petra, of course.
I mean, the thing is, I suppose maybe they think Stalingrad is okay now with the nerfed radar duration. Moskva and Nevsky are probably occupying the same slot because they have the long radar duration still. But I have to admit, I've never been that much into King of the Seas myself. So I'll leave others to judge if those restrictions are what's needed or not. The two Nevskys always. No, you could go with one Moscow and one Nevsky, two Moskvas. I have no idea like which of those two performs better in competitive, to be honest. Moskva is still a pretty decent ship. It just has been like pushed out by Stalingrad and Petra because they're even better ships. But with the nerfed radar duration on Petra and Stalingrad, I suppose Moskva might have way back in. But I think overall, those have been the most interesting news. There is, although, something else we'd like to mention. I think it's been talked about by a few people already, but there has been like the railgun bug, or well, there have been multi-blaming bugs introduced recently. And now Wargaming has decided to fix that by basically like you shoot not where you aim, but where you aimed like half a second earlier, right? So the thing is that by moving the mouse very quickly, you could basically shoot an enemy and the game calculated as if the enemy was like 4 kilometers in front of you, even though they were 20 kilometers. So you had supersonic shells with the penetration of 4 kilometers, right? Basically instantly went to the target. And in order to fix that bug, Wargaming has decided that you basically shoot where your mouse used to be, so you can no longer abuse the system, because then if you move your mouse too quickly, you just shoot into the water. Which also means that if you try to properly aim at a ship and you aren't trying to abuse any bugs, you have to keep in mind that your guns are not gonna shoot where you're aiming, but where you aimed half a second earlier. That means, for example, you might have to give more lead, because you are not actually shooting for the lead that you give, but the lead that you, your mouse is constantly moving. So things to keep in mind. also a problem with like fast-moving targets if you're trying to shoot a French and the French is constantly like wiggling and so on, because if you like keep following it with your mouse and shooting, you have to keep in mind that your shells will not go where you're currently aiming, but where you used to aim, right? And you were moving the mouse where you like maybe trying to get where that destroyer is currently dodging, and then you look confused because your shell is actually going towards the right of the ship and you aim towards the left, because that's where your mouse were like half a second before you shot. So it's sad, but that's actually not a bug.
Yeah, we'll see what happens because of that. But at the moment, the advice is you just have to wait for half a second or a second before you, like, if you're bringing your reticle over a ship, you just got to wait that bit longer. It's especially annoying if you're in a very fast firing ship. I mean, if you're in a battleship, just that extra little bit of time is not going to feel that significant. But if you're in a fast firing destroyer, constantly adjusting your aim, then yeah, that's where you're going to notice it, and that's where it's going to be especially irritating.
And I mean, giving lead with fast ships, right? Because, your mouth moves automatically with the ship if you've looked on. But you have to keep in mind that your aim is not going to shoot where you aim, but where you used to, right? And especially with a fast-moving ship, even though you don't move your mouse, your aim is moving relatively quickly. So what I've noticed is that when I try to shoot faster moving ships, that my aim is often off because I'm not giving enough lead, because it's not shooting at the lead that I give, but, shooting the right. Was like 5 seconds. So I've actually felt in a few ships, especially with slower shells and against faster moving targets, that my aim has been a bit questionable. Simply because I'm giving the lead that I used to, and that's no longer enough.
Hopefully they can come up with an actual solution that doesn't break something or introduce some new unwanted behavior again.
I mean,
it's a bit silly that we keep coming to these issues that then generate new issues.
I can still always just tell you that there is this free online quality assurance course that they offer. It's a joke that keeps on giving. The question is Wargaming actually trying to work on a fix for this, or have they now, on their perspective, fixed it and they're going to leave it up? Because, in time people will adjust to this new development. They will just, this is how aim works. People will aim differently and so on. I mean, it's still irritating against wiggling targets. Against other targets, you just have to adjust.
I mean, maybe that's what they're hoping, because, from their perspective, it means they don't have to spend any more money trying to fix the problem.
Yeah, I mean, in Wargaming's... let's just say Wargaming is not a company that gives me the idea that they really care. They just put a fix on it, possibly because people were shooting carriers with it, and now that's fixed, and they move on with their lives. And they just ignore any of the... I mean, let's be honest, there might be quite a few people who aren't that good at aiming. They might not realize the difference. So maybe Wargaming is like, this will just affect mostly like the good players, and who cares? I guess time will tell. I haven't actually heard any... I'm not sure, was there any answer from Wargaming to this, or have they just been silent?
I haven't seen a thing, but I may have missed it.
I mean, that's always a possibility. But time will tell, I guess.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing, like, if there would either be something on the dev blog or there would have been something on the player support portal, but there's neither. So
I mean, sometimes there's just like an answer somewhere in a forum or a Reddit thread.
That's true. I actually haven't looked at the Warships Reddit in a few days, but I think it's mostly the usual mix of stuff. There's a picture of someone having built the Otago in what they say is a Lego game, but I don't think that's actual Lego. But that's maybe not what we're looking for.
Well, I suppose half of Reddit is full of making fun of submarines.
Indeed. Yeah, there's several threads, or like clips of the aim bug, and people asking, have they fixed it yet?
The last aim bug or the current fix?
I guess the current one. I mean, because the current one is kind of like the fix for the rail guns. So don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that more or less actually concludes the news this week. Well, actually 2 weeks because I was away last week, but there hasn't been that much happening. Because I think Wargaming spends all of their time to prepare the submarines that are fully ready and don't need any adjustments. It's trying to adjust them last minute. After
yeah, I'm convinced that I don't know. That every time they said, "Oh yeah, if subs don't work, we'll take them out." I'm kind of convinced at this point that was maybe a bit of a lie.
I mean, see, the thing is, I think Wargaming has completely different ideas of what doesn't work mean than us players do. Which is also why there is basically this we call it is perception that Wargaming isn't playing the game, because if you're actually playing the game, a lot of the decision they're making, you wouldn't do that. And it's the same like with submarines. Submarines might work on a spreadsheet, right? Because if you look on a spreadsheet, what you see is the average damage that a submarine does and the average survivability and so on, and you can tweak that, right? But if that's because like out of 10 submarines, 9 are underperforming and 1 is overperforming tremendously, then on a spreadsheet that all balances out. And then you're like, well, this class is ready.
Yeah, it does underlie some issues with their methodology, shall we say. Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling that we're going to have at some point in the next, like, I don't know, couple of years, and it'll be like RTS carriers going to the current carriers, because it, in a lot of ways, like the things that subs can do are a lot like what old RTS carriers could do. And in terms of just like, well, I'm going to pick on you in particular and make your life miserable, and I'm going to, just delete you, and there's nothing you can do about it from point blank range. And there's a reason that they changed the old CVs, and that they were trying to make it so that the especially skilled players weren't able to dominate quite as hard, and that having a good CV on one team and a bad CV on the other team just had such a disproportionate effect on the outcome. And I don't know if subs are quite as unbalanced in that respect, but I suspect that the difference between a sub player that's really using all their tools and actually knows how to ambush somebody at close range, as I had the experience of earlier today, and there was literally nothing I could do about it because I didn't have hydro. Compared to a sub player that dies in the first 4 minutes, like it's probably gonna end up being a not dissimilar situation that caused the revision to CVs. So yeah, I think they're just setting themselves up to having to make more drastic changes in the future, just by having subs in at all, I suppose.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm curious how it will affect the sub population, because if people can actually like sort of grind subs, and they need dedicated commanders for subs, and can make all the missions and everything with subs, how is it going to affect people playing them? Will there be more people playing them? Will there be less people playing them? Will the people that play them be better? Are now a lot of people just trying it out because they got the sub for free and they just jump in and like, hi, I don't know how this works. Will it just be less but more dedicated Submarine players? It's like the thing with subs is that there are so many ways this could go wrong, because a well-played subs is tremendously overpowered and there aren't really tools to really combat them. So, it could just remain sort of the same it is now, or it could go horribly wrong. And I mean, Wargaming has no idea which way it's gonna go. They're making a big gamble, but I don't think they're self-aware enough to realize that, because they don't really play their own game.
Yeah.
And don't understand the statistics.
Certainly feels that way sometimes. Yeah, I mean, especially at the moment, probably the biggest annoyance when you're coming across a skilled player is when they do get close enough to shotgun you when they're unspotted and there's nothing you can do about it, because you don't even then get the marker on the water from them having used their sonar. So they can. It's basically like the very old days of when it was possible, before everybody effectively had the spotted indicator, and there were the sneaky destroyers that could basically go around and drop walls of torpedoes without anyone ever knowing that they were there. And the first indication you would have that they were there was a Shimikaze's wall of death coming towards you, kind of thing. So there's a reason why they gave everybody that little I'm spotted indicator as a freebie instead of making it a captain skill, just to level the playing field and to remove that element which could be perceived as being very unfair. And yet they've reintroduced that element with submarines. So well done, Wargaming.
I mean, the concerning thing is that obviously with the early access, how it works these days, people are gonna pay money for those submarines, which may make Wargaming even more like. I mean, they even said that they don't want to change them for several patches, but they are not premiums, but they're sort of selling them like premiums, which means they might be even more reluctant to make any too drastic changes, which will not bode well for the game at all, I suppose. But, I mean, we shall see. Maybe, a lot of this might still be from the old developers. Maybe there's gonna be some new people coming in with the game development moving away from St. Petersburg. Maybe we'll have some hope that they have somebody competent. Yeah, I'm not believing my own words.
We'll see.
And on those bright thoughts, I think that sort of was it, right?
Yeah, I think so. There's still other sort of ongoing small things, like you can play Battleship in the Armory, which is you can even get it to play itself. Although, unsurprisingly, I saw on Reddit that people have already figured out the strategies that the AI is using. It's got like 3 or 4 set strategies, and so people already sort of game theory the optimal starting placement to counter the strategies and things like that, and maximize the tokens you can get. But even not doing that, there's a couple of things worth getting there, but mostly the econ bonus packages for tier 7s, and don't know if there's anything else really. But I think there's some of the perma camos, but I really don't like the anniversary perma camos this time around, so I've not bothered. There's also the last year's, the 6th anniversary perma camos, and I've got all of those already, I guess. So, yeah. I've just been going for the bonus packages for tier 7 ships. What else? There was something else. There's also the they've hidden it quite well away this time, but there's the kind of anniversary, like the browser trawl thing where you can go through and it shows you all your stats for the last year. They normally make a bigger thing of that, but I don't know. I kind of stumbled across the link by accident. Maybe it's also in an email they've sent out, because that's another way they do these things usually. So yeah, I'm gonna say that the anniversary event feels
lackluster.
Yeah, a little underwhelming. I mean, the super containers was nice, and I got the Hornet out of one of the super containers. So there's another tier 8 ship I've got for free. But it's not one I was especially wild about getting, because premium carrier, but I can play in operations, I guess. So that's the thing. Yeah.
So chat has apparently Anhalt has been released, which I completely missed.
That's available now as well. 12,800, or you can buy the super duper bonus bundle with the hideous camouflage for nearly 25,000.
It's where you get the mermaid captain that has no specific voice, just a picture and the weird camo and so on. So, I mean, I haven't played the Anhalt, so unfortunately I can't tell you anything about it. I'm not gonna spend...
I'm not even... I could have bought sufficient doubloons and had it like, oh yeah, this is an official business expense for my channel, but I can't even be bothered doing that. To be honest. Maybe once it's in the like super container drop list at some point in the future, it might pop up as a ship I get for free, as I got the Brandenburg for free. But aside from that,
unfortunately,
I'm not terribly interested.
I don't think we can tell you much about the Anhalt because neither of us has it, and neither of us is gonna spend money on it.
No, there's certainly. I don't know if there's been any. I don't think Little White Mouse has done a review or anything like that, but there's certainly some videos on YouTube covering it. Nobody seems to be especially enthusiastic about it, and Flamu was his usual bombastic, like it's either great or it's trash, and in this case, it was trash. So take that how you will, kind of thing. But it does seem rather underwhelming. Like up-tiered Bayern, but with smaller guns, I guess. It's got quite a lot of guns, and it does seem like the armor's still quite decent at tier 8, but yeah. There's a bit of a saturation of tier 8 premium German battleships in particular now.
It's like we have the...
There's Odin, Brandenburg.
Tirpitz.
Tirpitz, obviously, as Anhalt. Tirpitz B. I don't know if there's anything else I've missed. I mean, Tirpitz B is kind of a bit...
It's the same, yeah. I'm not sure where Anhalt from, like, because we already have like the Odin and the Brandenburg both with like lower caliber guns at this tier, sort of. And it just feels like one more of those. I mean, Odin is pretty bad.
It does seem like yet another release that makes the Odin even more obsolete than it was already. I don't know what to say, really.
I don't understand. I'm not sure how health or so it is, but it's not sure if it can beat Brandenburg, to be honest, because
it's one of those ones.
Brandenburg is alright-ish.
Yeah, if you were thinking about it I've seen a fair few of them in operations, but also just in some random battles as well. But I don't know how it compares, even just for doing a secondary build, for example, as compared to the other ones.
If I
want to take a secondary ship into ops, it's either going to be Massachusetts Atlantico or Graf Zeppelin, oddly enough. Doesn't quite have the range, but the rate of fire is a bit bonkers.
Yeah, Atlantico is a surprisingly good ship despite being from a dock.
Yeah.
And it sort of has pushed...
That might actually be one of the best dockyard ships we've had overall.
Yeah.
I think.
And it sort of has pushed the Germans a bit to the background. because the Atlantico is basically like one of the top tier secondary ships now at this tier. I mean, the Germans still have either like torpedoes or hydro, so there is then. Well, it's also like the Bismarck and the Tirpitz are perfectly fine ships, and like the Odin was a disappointment. The Brandenburg is okayish and can keep kind of up with them, I think, but it had, I think, torps, no hydro, lower caliber guns. Not sure if there was anything else special about the Brandenburg. It's been a long time.
Brandenburg doesn't have hydro.
Yeah, it has the torps, though.
Yeah, Odin. I mean, both Odin and Brandenburg, I think they have the same quad launchers. Yeah. So Odin gets the hydro. The only downside of Brandenburg versus Odin is it doesn't have a hydro. Which, I mean, that makes more Brandenburg like a comparison to Tirpitz than anything else, because it's like you've got the torpedoes and hydro, whereas Tirpitz versus Bismarck, it's hydro versus not hydro kind of thing. So, yeah. I don't know. I've played all of one battle in the Brandenburg, though, so I'm hardly qualified to talk about it, having gotten it in a box the other day.
It's been a while since I did so. So, there's a comment from Sully. Unless I replace the ship in anything other than random, then it's not a balanced opinion.
Yeah, I mean, so that's... unless you're specifically evaluating how it's going to be doing an operations kind of thing, but for a sort of general opinion of, you need to be playing it in random.
I mean, I think his point is people need to play it in something else than random. And my point would be random is the main game mode, and most of the...
Oh, I see. I didn't read that right.
I would say that, random is what you basically evaluate most ships for. And yes, if you want to talk about other stuff other than random, then you should specifically mention it, like being good in random. For example, competitive play, right? Competitive play is relatively different. Ships that are good in randoms aren't necessarily good in competitive because there are very specialized roles that you go for. Coop is something where you can put anything in, right? Doesn't really matter on the ship. Coop, you're mostly just... I mean, some ships are very bad in Coop because the other players will farm all the damage and you won't get any, right? So I feel like destroyers are probably not going to do that well in Coop in general.
Especially the ones with long torp reloads.
Yeah, but and operations. I mean, I've not played that much myself. For operations, you'd need to have a specific guide for a specific operation because in different operations, other things are more important.
Generally, like for a battleship, good secondaries is always good, or fast rate of fire. Cruisers, pretty much anything works for operations, I guess. Although it's probably the hardest class to play in operations because some ops you don't get a healing zone and you're most likely to get citadeled and things by the AI ships. So that can be... That's the most sort of risky class to take into an operation, definitely. And then destroyers, you want just anything with a quick torpedo reload and decent damage. And if it's got good guns on top of that, then so much the better.
Yeah, and for example, in some operations, anti-air might be more important than in others and such. So
I think only Hermes really is the only one where anti-air truly matters. In Cherry Blossom, you've got the two AI carriers that come in. Their AA largely takes care of the airfield planes. So yeah, not even really AA, to be honest. There used to be more of a thing. I mean, defense of Newport used to have a carrier come in at the end, and it doesn't anymore. Although the voiceover still says there's a carrier coming in. there's one or two where they've basically never ever changed the voiceover lines, and it's a bit jarring and every time you hear it. But yeah, I mean, Aegis, they put the friendly carrier back in, the Saipan, but it doesn't really seem to make that much difference. So yeah, AA, I wouldn't say AA is that big of a factor, really.
You're more an expert on operations than I am. I haven't played them in a while. But then when it comes to something special like brawls and such, or like other limited special game modes. I mean, it's hard to evaluate ships for that because they are so infrequent and they change the rules so much, right? So for example, in a 3 versus 3 brawl, a ship might be a lot better than something else, but if it's a game mode that happens twice a year or so, then it's not really what you would evaluate a ship for generally. So I would say if you review a ship, you usually review a ship for random battles, and
that's, I mean, you kind of concentrate on what people are most going to use a thing for, but it's always nice. I mean, Little White Mouse, for example, usually has a section of is this going to be any good in operations? Is this going to be any good in?
Yeah, if you want to go more in depth,
is it going to be any good in competitive? Although, is it any good in competitive is usually a deeply subjective.
Yeah, I mean. The next question is ranked actually competitive or not? For example, like there are always tier lists for all sorts of things like ranked and so on. But honestly, I feel like if you know what you're doing, you probably can take most ships into ranked or so anyway, if you like. Some obviously are going to be better than others, but let's not pretend that ranked is a high level gameplay. Mostly ships are more restricted when you actually do like clan battles and so on, where you coordinate, where you can't just use random battle tactics, basically. Yeah,
I think we might be just about done, unless there's. This has been quite a short one for us, but there's not been that much. In fact, we probably even stretched it out longer with rambling than it probably needed to be. But
no, we weren't rambling. We were answering chat's questions.
Yeah.
But I think that's it from us for this week, and we'll be back next week.
Bye.
So, bye everyone. Have a good night.